Coming up, Disney's annual shareholders meeting gives us a first look at the investment roadmap for Walt Disney World over the next 10 years. The Disney Enchantment and Harmonious nighttime spectaculars have permanently ended at Walt Disney World, and the removal of the barges is already beginning in Epcot. And we take a look at the latest Reedy Creek drama with Governor Ron DeSantis' response and Disney CEO Bob Iger going on the record about it during the annual shareholders meeting. All that and more on the way. This is Mickey Views News.
All who come to this happy place, welcome.
Now I'm the king of the swingers, oh, the jungle VIP. I've reached the top and had to stop, and that's what's bothering me.
First up in the news today, the annual shareholders meeting for the Walt Disney Company just happened. So the big news out of this shareholders meeting was, first, there's going to be a live action Moana film, which is in development right now, a live action remake of the 2016 animated film Moana. Moana, we just can't escape it. It has to be at every park at Walt Disney World. We need a live action version, an animated version. It never ends with Moana. I guess it's very popular. I guess Disney's focus groups, they say do more Moana stuff because it seems pretty crazy to be doing a live action remake of something that was animated not that long ago, pretty recently. Pretty crazy stuff. Let me know what you guys think about that. Also interesting, Bob Iger said that with the opening of Moana Journey of Water later this year in Epcot, that will conclude Epcot's multi-year transformation. Now, I was just in Epcot yesterday, and there is a lot that needs help in that park. There's a lot of stuff that is outdated, that is old, that needs work. They never did that Spaceship Earth update they said they were going to do. Most of the stuff that they showed in the Epcot experience never ended up happening. It was put on pause, and then it was canceled behind closed doors. They did so little of what was originally announced, and what we're ending up with here is really just a bunch of planters in the middle and a rebuilt portion of Innoventions West that they mistakenly tore down to begin with, and they're now rebuilding, but not as nice. So just the fact that they're declaring that the project is finished here, I think just goes to show how they bit off more than they could chew. The money situation changed. They decided they didn't want to invest in Epcot. They dramatically reduced the size of their capital investment in the project. Now here's where things get really interesting though. Despite how cheap Disney's been with the parks as of late, the lack of investment, Parks Chairman Josh D'Amaro, he doesn't even announce anything new because they don't want to commit to anything. So all he ever does is gives us ideas, teasers, words, hyping us up about nothing. But then out of the blue at the shareholders meeting, CEO Iger says over the next 10 years, they will be investing $17 billion in Walt Disney World, which will add approximately 13,000 jobs in the state of Florida, which is a very different sentiment from what we heard under Chapek, when Chapek was in charge of Disney, and just Disney's actions lately, where they don't seem to want to spend money at all. For instance, right now over at the Magic Kingdom, they're beginning to remove the 50th decor from the castle. They've taken the 50th emblem off the front, and the executives over there, they are hoping that none of the decor leaves noticeable scars, because we know how the Florida sun, it cooks that paint and all that. They're hoping that there aren't noticeable scars there, because that would mean that they have to repaint the castle, and they're trying to save every penny they can. They're hoping that they don't have to repaint the castle. Originally, following the 50th, the castle was supposed to be painted back to its normal color scheme. But these guys are so cheap, they're hoping that they can just keep the 50th castle paint job in perpetuity, where they just take off the decor, they leave the paint job as is, they leave the rose gold on the castle, and they just leave it there for several years until it gets so bad that they're forced to repaint it. Also, there's this really funny photo going around on social media where you can see where there used to be a 50th orange bird display in one of the stores in Disney Springs, and you can see what they've done. They've just taken the 50 off of it, but you can still see where it is. Just such cheap stuff. So this is the day-to-day we're seeing at Disney right now, is what I'm trying to establish. This is the day-to-day attitude that we're seeing. And then you look at what Iger said today during the shareholders meeting. It stands in stark contrast to what we're seeing on the day-to-day, where here Iger is saying that they are going to commit $17 billion worth of investment to Walt Disney World over the next 10 years. That sounds like enough money to do the Coco area behind Big Thunder Mountain, whatever they'll end up doing with Dino Land in the Animal Kingdom. There's still a lot of debate over what intellectual property to put in there. They have not decided just yet, as far as I know. And several more expansions on top of that could also be done with that $17 billion, perhaps elsewhere at the Magic Kingdom. They always need capacity at the Magic Kingdom. I think we'll see multiple expansions at the Magic Kingdom. And then they also may use that expansion pad over in Pandora in the Animal Kingdom, since Iger seems to really like that franchise. But before we get carried away with what Disney could do with $17 billion, my question really is, how much of this is just talk, right? Because this number is quite specific. It really doesn't seem like Iger just made up this number on the spot, made this up. But until we see a change in attitude at a day-to-day level at Walt Disney World, the Disney World which currently can't afford a can of paint for the castle, I think we should hold our breath on all of this and really just wait and see what happens. Wait until we actually get some sort of announcement from Disney, something to get excited about, instead of getting prematurely excited and then Disney ends up disappointing us yet again, like we saw with the Epcot overhaul, like we saw with this and that. We know how it's been the last few years. But needless to say, this is a big change in tone from Disney, so that alone is quite exciting. This is a big change in tone from the Chapek years, where Iger is saying, hey, we're going to invest $17 billion in Walt Disney World over the next 10 years. And some are saying, oh, I think he's talking about labor or paying to run the parks. I don't think so. He better not be, because when you say you're investing in the parks, that implies capital expenditure, new stuff, which is called CapEx. If he was talking about labor and paying for garbage disposal and things of that nature, that is not typically referred to as an investment. That's just everyday expenditure. That is operational expenditure, OpEx, which is required to maintain the business. Doesn't really count as an investment. So that $17 billion should be in CapEx, in new stuff, in capital expenditure at the parks. And that would be very, very exciting. Personally, as someone who covers the developments at Walt Disney World, that would be quite awesome. That would give us a lot to cover here. So I really hope that wasn't just talk from Iger, but we'll have to see. Then we have some more Reedy Creek drama to get to. But real quick, before we do, last night I was in attendance over at Epcot for the final showing of Harmonious, which ended last night. It concluded, which is funny because the last time I saw Harmonious was the night it premiered. And the night it premiered, partways through the show, the audio in my area, I was over by Japan, it became out of sync by a few seconds. They had a world clock error. Disney fixed the issue for the next night, but Disney's had all sorts of issues with this new cloud-based, Wi-Fi-based show control system that they've been using out in the lagoon with Harmonious. But funny enough, I come back to watch Harmonious on its final night. The sound in our entire section by Germany went out. The speakers cut out for the final minute of Harmonious, or the last 30 seconds or so. And the people around me were laughing. It's kind of embarrassing. It's like, come on, Disney. So Disney needs to work on the show infrastructure, because this isn't a Harmonious issue. This needs to be fixed for all future shows. This is a show issue, some sort of infrastructure problem they have over in Epcot, where they're having a lot of technical difficulties out there. As far as the show itself, Harmonious, I wasn't the biggest fan of these shows that Disney did for the 50th, but a lot of people did like them, especially Harmonious. I think there were some fans of Harmonious, especially. Was the turnout to the final Harmonious show nearly what the turnout to the last Illuminations was? No, absolutely not. It was not nearly as busy as the final Illuminations, but there were many fans of the show in attendance. That main area where you get a really good view of the show, the port of entry area, that area was absolutely packed, but other areas it was really not very packed at all. But there were many people there to see the final show of Harmonious, as well as the final show of Enchantment. And speaking of Enchantment, here you're watching a moment in Disney history I captured where the finale of the final Enchantment is going off in the distance at the Magic Kingdom, as Harmonious, the final Harmonious show, is also ending right in front of me in Epcot. So we had these two shows ending simultaneously, which was definitely a historic thing to witness there. And now Happily Ever After and Epcot Forever are returning here. And then later this year, a new permanent Epcot Nighttime Spectacular will premiere, replacing the temporary Epcot Forever, which is now back. So those oil rigs that we had in the middle of the lagoon throughout the Harmonious run, they are now on their way out. In fact, inside the World Showcase, you can spot in the distance that red crane, which is back there in the marina backstage at Epcot. You can see it from the World Showcase. That crane is going to rip the barges apart, and Disney is already starting to do some dismantling of the barges on site in the World Showcase Lagoon. They actually sort of have to rip them up before they can even bring them back to the marina, because especially the middle one, it's too big to even fit. It has to go back in pieces and things like that. Very excited to see those barges head out and the sight lines return here in the World Showcase. And I'm also excited to see what Disney does with the new Epcot show, which is coming later this year. We will see how it goes. Finally, getting to the latest on the Reedy Creek situation, which is all over the news. I know you guys want to hear more about this. For those of you who don't know the deal, the state of Florida has reformed Reedy Creek, which is the local governing body for Walt Disney World. Basically what they did is they made it more up to date with the current law. It was something that was actually on the docket, something that the state should have done a while ago, but this was a politically motivated update where it wasn't just updating Reedy Creek to comply with current law, it was also about adding a governor-appointed board. And the governor-appointed board, they got in there, and soon after they got in, they discovered that there was a developers agreement the old Disney-controlled board signed right before they got fired, which basically renders the new board powerless. There's much debate over, can this agreement be undone? Who can undo it? Does it have to go to the Supreme Court? This and that. I'm no lawyer, but even the lawyers that I've talked to don't know for sure just yet, partly because we don't even have all the documents yet. They shoved a lot of stuff through at the last minute. The new board's counsel is still doing discovery, still going through document after document. So while they're working on that, the DeSantis team is beginning to respond. The state is starting to respond. The first move we saw following the revelations was a public records request from the Florida Attorney General sent to Reedy Creek saying, quote, please provide copies of all emails, text messages, and other correspondence from or to employees, board members, or other affiliates of the Reedy Creek Improvement District regarding the following topic. Documents discussing agreements, covenants, or similar documents approved or considered by the Board of Supervisors on February 8th, 2023. Please limit your search to documents discussing an intention or goal of circumventing, avoiding, frustrating, mitigating, or otherwise attempting to avoid the effects of anticipated actions by the Florida governor and Florida legislature. Also that day, DeSantis made a statement during a speech saying, quote, there's a lot of little back and forth going on now with the state taking control, but rest assured, you ain't seen nothing yet. That leads us to today, where Governor DeSantis has formally requested an investigation from the state's Inspector General over whether the behavior of the prior Reedy Creek was legal. Taking a look at the letter DeSantis just submitted, it says, quote, Dear Ms. Miguel, on February 27th, 2023, I signed House Bill 9B, Reedy Creek Improvement District, Orange and Osceola counties, which replaced the Disney-controlled Reedy Creek Improvement District with a new Central Florida Tourism Oversight District and appointed 5 new members to the Central Florida Tourism Oversight District Board. Recently, the new board members informed the public that they had uncovered that immediately before the enactment of House Bill 9B, the RCID Board of Supervisors attempted to enter into last-minute development and restrictive covenant agreements with Walt Disney Parks and Resorts US Inc., Walt Disney World, designed to usurp the authority of the new board. These collusive and self-dealing arrangements aim to nullify the recently passed legislation, undercut Florida's legislative process, and defy the will of Floridians. In addition, based on initial observations of counsel, the RCID board's actions appear to suffer from serious legal infirmities, including, among other things, inadequate notice, lack of consideration, improper delegation of authority, and ethical violations such as conflicts of interest and self-dealing. Therefore, pursuant to Section 1432 Florida statutes, I formally request that you, as the Chief Inspector General of the state of Florida, in consultation with the Florida Department of Law Enforcement, launch a thorough review and investigation into the actions of the Reedy Creek Board of Supervisors described above. Such investigation should include analysis of the following: Reedy Creek's adherence to applicable Florida civil and criminal laws and ethics requirements, the qualifications of Reedy Creek's prior Board of Supervisors and the legal validity of their actions, the involvement of Walt Disney World employees and agents in the execution of Reedy Creek's actions, any financial gain or benefit derived by Walt Disney World as a result of Reedy Creek's actions and Reedy Creek's justification for such actions, all Reedy Creek board, employee, or agent communications related to RCID's actions, including those with Walt Disney World employees and agents, and all RCID board, employee, or agent communications related to House Bill 9B, Reedy Creek Improvement District, Orange and Osceola counties, and the CFTOD. Any legal or ethical violations should be referred to the appropriate authorities. Thank you for your prompt attention to this matter. End quote. And also today, Disney punching back a little. CEO Bob Iger commented on all of this during the annual shareholders meeting that just happened. Take a listen.
Alan, let me, if you don't mind, let me address this issue, which I haven't really done much publicly, but I'd love the opportunity just to put it all in perspective. First of all, I know you said you're a resident, I think, of Melbourne, Florida. We love the state of Florida. And I think that's reflected in not only how much we've invested over the last 50 years, but how much we've given back in the form of jobs and community service, taxes, which you brought up, tourism, of course, and all sorts of other responsible business practices. We've also always respected and appreciated what the state has done for us. It's kind of been a two-way street. But a year ago, the company took a position on pending Florida legislation. And while the company may have not handled the position that it took very well, a company has a right to freedom of speech just like individuals do. And obviously, in taking the position, the governor got very angry about the position Disney took. And it seems like he's decided to retaliate against us, including the naming of a new board to oversee the property and the business. In effect, to seek to punish a company for its exercise of a constitutional right. And that just seems really wrong to me. Against any company or individual, but particularly against a company that means so much to the state that you live in. And to put that in perspective, we have over 75,000 employees, which I noted in my opening. Countless thousands of indirect jobs have been created. About 50 million visitors will go through our gates this year alone, about 8 million of them from outside the US. And we are the largest taxpayer in the state. And you may find this interesting as it relates to future taxes, but we're currently planning now to invest over $17 billion in Walt Disney World over the next 10 years. And those investments, we estimate, will create 13,000 new Disney jobs and thousands of other indirect jobs. And they'll also attract more people to the state and generate more taxes. And so our point on this is that any action that thwarts those efforts simply to retaliate for a position the company took sounds not just anti-business, but it sounds anti-Florida. And I'll just leave it at that. Thank you very much for your interest.
So everybody, that's the latest on Reedy Creek. A pretty crazy situation. You can tell the lawyers are still looking into what exactly is going on the state end, and they're going to be doing some sort of investigation by the looks of it, which will definitely be a big deal if that actually ends up happening. And of course, on the other end, we have Iger here saying, hey, you know, we're sticking by our guns. We're going to do what we're going to do. So we'll have to see how this all pans out. But that's the latest happening in the world of Disney. I'll keep you on top of all the latest, so make sure you're subscribed with those notifications on. Thank you so much for watching from the Mickey Views Magic Studio. This is Brayden. Have a magical day.